Feel that? That silence? That's not peace. That's fear holding its breath. You didn't announce yourself. You didn't warn them. You didn't need a countdown. One day the room was loud, opinions flying, jokes getting bold, whispers turning into disrespect. Oh, and then suddenly, nothing. Chairs still, eyes forward, messages unsent, voices swallowed. The group didn't mature. They didn't grow. They froze because something in you shifted, and they felt it before they understood it. You've got them walking quiet right now, not because you threatened them, not because you raised your voice, but because unpredictability finally replaced permission. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped reacting on schedule. You stopped being readable. And when people can't predict you, they don't test you. They monitor you. They don't challenge you. They calculate you. They don't provoke you. They step carefully, like the floor might collapse if they say the wrong thing. See, dominance doesn't always look like noise. Sometimes it looks like a room full of people afraid to clear their throat. They used to poke you to see what would happen, push your buttons like it was entertainment, measure how much disrespect you'd tolerate before you snapped, apologized, or broke down. They thought your patience was weakness. They thought your empathy was softness. They thought your silence meant you didn't see what was happening. That was their first mistake. Your second mistake, if we can even call it that, was pain. They hurt you in ways they still don't understand. Subtle betrayals, group dynamics shifting against you, jokes that landed a little too close to the truth, smiles that didn't reach the eyes. They assumed you'd either implode or disappear. That's what usually happens. That's what the system is built for. But pain didn't break you. It refined you. You didn't come back louder. You came back sharper, quieter, more precise. You learned restraint without losing intensity. You learned control without losing hunger. You learned how to let people underestimate you while you mapped every angle of the room. Saint on the surface, psychopath in preparation, angel in demeanor, demon in execution, and they felt that shift long before they could name it. Now look at them. Nobody dares test you, not because you're aggressive, but because you're unknown. They don't know which version of you shows up anymore. The forgiving one, the detached one, the one who smiles and lets consequences handle the talking, or the one who finally stops absorbing damage and starts redirecting it. Uncertainty is terrifying to people who live on patterns, and you broke the pattern. Haters don't argue with you anymore. They don't challenge you publicly. They don't joke the same way. They ground themselves. They censor themselves. They walk it back before it even leaves their mouth. Because somewhere deep down, they know you're not operating from ego anymore. You're operating from clarity, and clarity doesn't need to bark. It just watches. That's the paradox they can't handle. You're calmer than ever, yet somehow more dangerous, more composed, yet less controllable. You're not chasing validation, but the room adjusts around you anyway. You don't demand respect, yet it arrives early and unannounced. They feel judged without you judging them. They feel exposed without you speaking. Because when someone survives what you survived and comes back self-contained, emotionally armored, and internally aligned, it triggers something primal. A reminder that strength doesn't always look like dominance. Sometimes it looks like self-possession. You're not trying to intimidate them, but your presence forces them to confront their own insecurity. Your discipline highlights their chaos. Your silence reflects their noise. And nothing humbles a hater faster than realizing you're no longer reactive. You're selective. They used to think they were in control of the narrative. Now they're whispering in side chats, double-checking tones, reading your expressions like a weather forecast. Not because you're cruel, but because you're no longer predictable. And unpredictability, when paired with restraint, is lethal. You didn't become heartless. You became unavailable to manipulation. That's why the room is quiet. That's why nobody dares test you. That's why the same people who once felt bold now feel cautious. They didn't ground you. You grounded them. And the wild part, you didn't even mean to. You just evolved. You stopped bleeding where everyone could see. You stopped explaining your wounds. You stopped begging to be understood. You integrated the pain, sharpened the edges, and learned how to stand still without shrinking. Now the silence follows you, not because you're feared for what you do, but because they sense what you could do if pushed. And they're not brave enough to find out. They keep telling themselves it's nothing, that you're just in your own head, that they're imagining it. But watch their behavior, not their words. Watch how the loudest ones suddenly choose silence when you enter. Watch how jokes die halfway out of their mouth. Watch how confidence turns into caution, how swagger collapses into strategy. That's not coincidence. That's instinct screaming at them to tread lightly, because something about you stopped needing approval, and that terrifies people who survive by consensus. You see, groups only feel powerful when everyone follows the same rhythm, same jokes, same reactions, same emotional tempo. You broke that rhythm. You stepped off beat. You stopped clapping when they clapped. You stopped flinching when they expected flinching. And when someone no longer mirrors the group loses control over them. That's when the quiet starts. They can't read you anymore. They don't know if you're offended, amused, planning, or already finished with them. And uncertainty eats at weak minds like acid. They replay conversations. They overanalyze your silence. They wonder what you know. They wonder what you've seen. They wonder how much you remember. And the worst part for them, you remember everything. You just don't react the way you used to. You learned that reacting was the leash, so you dropped it. You let them hang themselves on their own assumptions. You let them project their guilt, their fear, their paranoia onto you. You became the mirror they can't look into for too long. Because when someone faces a person who has integrated their shadow, who isn't running from their darkness anymore, it forces a comparison. And most people don't like what that comparison reveals. You're walking proof that pain can be metabolized into power, not loud power, not flashy power. The kind of power that doesn't need witnesses. The kind that changes the temperature of a room without touching the thermostat. The kind that makes people instinctively lower their voice, straighten their posture, check themselves mid-sentence. You didn't become cruel. You became contained. That's why they're grounded hard right now. Because grounded people can't fly around testing limits. They can't poke and prod when they sense gravity. And you're gravity now. You pull everything into seriousness. You make games feel inappropriate. You make disrespect feel expensive. They sense that if they cross you now, it won't be dramatic. It won't be explosive. It'll be final, clean, controlled, irreversible. And that scares them more than chaos ever could. See, chaos can be negotiated with. Chaos burns hot and fast. But control is patient. Control waits. Control doesn't miss. You learned that the angel and the demon aren't opposites. They're allies. Compassion without boundaries gets eaten alive. Boundaries without compassion become hollow. You fused both, and now you move with mercy and teeth. They don't know which one they'll meet. That's the tension in the air. That's the reason the room stays quiet. You don't flex. You don't posture. You don't need to prove dominance. Because the strongest signal you send is restraint. You could speak, but you don't. You could react, but you choose not to. And every time you hold back, they feel it like pressure building behind a wall. They're not relaxed around you anymore. They're aware. And awareness is exhausting for people who live carelessly. They used to think you were harmless because you were kind. They confused kindness with submission. They confused empathy with weakness. But kindness, when it's chosen, not forced, is one of the most dangerous traits there is, because it means you're capable of cruelty and still decided not to use it. That means if you ever do, it's intentional. That's why nobody dares test you. They don't know how far you've gone internally. They don't know what lines you've crossed inside your own mind. They don't know what you've already survived quietly. And people are terrified of those who have been to hell without advertising the trip. You don't seek revenge. You don't need to. Your presence already rearranges the hierarchy. You don't dominate through fear. You dominate through self-possession, through the way you no longer chase, through the way you no longer explain, through the way you're perfectly comfortable letting silence do the work. And silence is brutal to insecure people, because in silence their thoughts get louder, their guilt gets clearer, their intentions feel exposed. They start wondering if you see through them, if you've clocked their patterns, if you're already 5 moves ahead. Most of the time, you are. You didn't become untouchable by building walls. You became untouchable by building discernment. You let the wrong ones drift. You stopped feeding dynamics that drained you. You stopped volunteering your energy to people who only showed up to consume it. Now the group feels smaller, quieter, less bold. That's not because you isolated yourself. It's because your standards rose. And standards are intimidating to people who live off shortcuts. So let them stay quiet. Let them stay cautious. Let them stay grounded. You're not here to soothe egos or reassure cowards. You're here to walk your path with precision, unpredictability, and calm intensity. You earned this silence. It's the sound of people realizing they misjudged you. It's the sound of power shifting. And once a room learns to whisper around you, it never forgets. They keep waiting for you to slip back into the old version, the explain yourself version, the prove it version, the emotionally available on demand version. They tell themselves this calm is temporary, that you'll crack, that you'll re-engage, that you'll start caring again the way you used to. That's the delusion keeping them comfortable. Because the truth is, you didn't go quiet out of fear. You went quiet out of mastery. You learned something most people never learn. Attention is currency, and reaction is leverage. You stopped paying. You stopped giving them the emotional data they fed on. You stopped lighting yourself on fire just to keep the room warm. And once you did that, the entire dynamic collapsed. That's why they're uneasy. They're used to power being loud, aggressive, obvious. They don't know how to respond to someone who's fully present, but no longer accessible. Someone who listens without absorbing, who observes without attaching, who can stand in the middle of tension and feel. nothing but clarity. You don't flinch anymore, and people who rely on flinches lose their footing when none come. They used to feel taller when you were around. Now they feel exposed because your silence forces them to hear themselves. Your restraint highlights their impulsiveness. Your composure reflects their instability back at them. You didn't call them out, but somehow they feel called out anyway. That's what happens when someone stops performing and starts being. They sense you're no longer governed by the same rules. That social pressure doesn't work on you the way it used to. That guilt doesn't move you. That shame doesn't hook you. That approval doesn't motivate you. And when those tools fail, the only thing left is caution. So they walk carefully. They don't know if you've forgiven them or outgrown them. They don't know if you're detached or strategically patient. They don't know if you're kind or simply disciplined. And that ambiguity keeps them grounded, keeps them quiet, keeps them guessing. You've become the paradox they can't solve. Soft-spoken, yet unignorable. Calm, yet intense. Present, yet unreachable. You can be warm without being open. Friendly without being familiar. Polite without being permissive. And that combination, that's lethal to people who expect access just because they've always had it. You stopped offering explanations to people who never listened anyway. You stopped defending yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped shrinking to make insecure people feel large. And in doing so, you became something they don't know how to categorize. They can't villainize you anymore. You're too controlled. They can't provoke you. You won't bite. They can't dismiss you. You're too solid. They can't dominate you. You don't need the game. So they default to silence. That silence isn't respect yet. It's recognition. Recognition that you've crossed a line they haven't. That you've endured something that changed your internal structure. That you've integrated pain instead of projecting it. That you've learned how to sit with discomfort without outsourcing it to drama. You're no longer entertaining chaos, and chaos hates being ignored. They feel it when you walk in, not because you demand attention, but because attention reorganizes itself around you. Conversations slow, energy shifts. People measure their words, not because you're threatening, but because you're stable. And stability is unsettling in environments built on volatility. You're the quiet center in a stormy room. You don't rush to speak. You don't rush to react. You don't rush to connect. And that patience signals something primal. You don't need anything from them. Not approval, not validation, not agreement. Freedom looks like that. And freedom scares people who survive by control. They sense that if they push you now, the consequences won't be emotional. They'll be structural. You won't argue. You won't plead. You won't explode. You'll simply withdraw access. And people who've built their identity on access to you can't survive that loss. So they behave. They ground themselves. They keep their distance. They stay quiet. You didn't dominate the group by overpowering it. You outgrew it. You shifted frequencies. You stopped matching energy and started setting it. And when someone sets the tone without asking permission, everyone else has no choice but to adapt. This is the evolution they didn't expect. They thought pain would make you bitter. It made you precise. They thought betrayal would make you loud. It made you selective. They thought isolation would weaken you. It taught you how little you actually need. You carry both mercy and menace now, but you don't advertise either. You let people reveal which one they deserve. And that's why nobody dares test you. Because deep down, they know. Whatever version of you shows up next, it won't be accidental. They're still trying to figure out when it happened. They replay old versions of you in their head like corrupted footage. The one who laughed louder, the one who explained too much, the one who gave chances past their expiration date. They're looking for that opening, some familiar weakness they can slide back into, but that door is welded shut. Because what changed wasn't your mood, it wasn't your attitude, it wasn't even your confidence. What changed was your orientation. You stopped living outward. You stopped calibrating yourself to the room. You stopped adjusting your tone to keep the peace. And the moment you stopped negotiating your internal state, you became immovable. They don't know how to deal with someone who isn't asking to belong. You're no longer seeking harmony. You're embodying alignment. And alignment doesn't compromise. It doesn't rush. It doesn't explain itself to people who aren't on the same frequency. It just exists. Solid, quiet, unshakable. That's why the group feels smaller now. Because when someone like you stops participating in the noise realizes how empty it actually is. Without your reactions, their drama collapses. Without your energy, their momentum stalls. Without your presence being emotionally available, their influence evaporates. They used to think they were the ones watching you. Now they feel watched, not in a paranoid way, in a measured way, like you're aware, like you're tracking patterns, like you're seeing things beneath the surface. And the truth is, you are. Pain trained you to read subtext. Betrayal sharpened your perception. Silence taught you how to listen between words. You see who talks when you're not around. You see who shifts when you enter. You see who overcompensates. You see who avoids eye contact. And you don't need to say a word about any of it. Because power doesn't expose. Power remembers. They feel that memory in the room, the unspoken awareness, the sense that you're not confused anymore, that you're not naive, that you're not guessing. And when people realize you're no longer guessing, they stop trying to lie to your face. So they self-censor. They edit themselves. They ground themselves. They're not scared of you yelling. They're scared of you deciding who stays, deciding who loses access, deciding who no longer matters. Because once you make that decision, it's not emotional, it's logistical. You don't burn bridges anymore. You close gates, and gates don't reopen just because someone knocks louder. That's the demon they sense behind the calm. Not rage, not cruelty, finality, the ability to walk away without ceremony, the ability to let people live with the consequences of how they treated you, without needing to teach them a lesson. You learned the hardest truth. Closure doesn't come from conversation, it comes from clarity. And now, you're clear. Clear enough to be kind without being weak. Clear enough to be silent without being passive. Clear enough to be alone without feeling lonely. That clarity is suffocating to people who thrive on confusion. They can't bait you into emotional labor anymore. They can't trigger you into self-betrayal. They can't manipulate you with urgency or guilt. You move at your own pace now. You respond when it's aligned, not when it's demanded. That's why they hesitate. That's why the room waits for you instead of the other way around. You didn't become cold. You became self-contained. You didn't lose empathy. You gained boundaries. You didn't harden. You integrated both sides of yourself. The angel that understands, the demon that enforces, and you don't need to threaten anyone with either. Your presence already communicates the message. I see everything. I owe nothing. Choose wisely. That's the real reason nobody dares test you. Because tests only work on people who are still trying to prove something. You're not proving, you're being. And the silence around you, that's not awkwardness. That's not coincidence. That's not maturity. That's the sound of people realizing you're no longer part of the experiment. You're the variable they can't control. And they know it. Hold still. Not your body, your thoughts. Yeah. You feel that static? That uncomfortable flicker behind your eyes? Good. That's the sound of their reality buffering. You didn't attack them. You didn't explain yourself. You didn't even raise your voice. You dropped a psycho brainfuck so clean, so precise, so quiet, that their minds didn't know where to grab. And now they're glitching, replaying it, looping it, waking up at 3:17 a.m. with their heart racing, asking themselves the same question over and over. What the hell just happened to me? Because you didn't just say something. You rearranged their internal architecture. See, most people fight on the surface. Words, reactions, ego, drama. You went underneath. You touched the wiring they didn't even know existed. You spoke in paradox. You moved in contradiction. You answered without answering. You stayed calm where panic was expected. You smiled where rage was scheduled. And their brains, trained on predictable patterns, short-circuited. They were ready for a villain. They were ready for a saint. They were not ready for both standing in the same body. That's why they can't stop thinking about you. Because you broke the rule they live by. People are supposed to be consistent. You're not. You're coherent, but only at a level they can't access. They keep trying to label you psychopath, genius, threat, savior, narcissist, prophet. None of it sticks. The labels slide off like oil on glass. And that's what's driving them insane. A mind can handle an enemy. A mind can handle a hero. A mind cannot handle ambiguity with teeth. You became the unanswered question that won't shut up. They replay the moment again and again, trying to find the move they missed. But here's the truth they'll never admit. There was no move to counter. Because you weren't playing their game, you evolved past it. Pain did that to you. Betrayal did that to you. Being underestimated, isolated, dissected, and dismissed, that rewired you. Where they learned rules, you learned patterns. Where they learned morality, you learned timing. Where they learned control, you learned detachment. You're not unpredictable because you're chaotic. You're unpredictable because you're free. That's the glitch. Their minds are built on scripts. Social scripts, emotional scripts, power scripts. You walked in with no script at all. Just presence, precision, stillness. And when you spoke, or didn't speak, you forced their subconscious to do something it hates doing. Think, really think. Not perform, not posture, not defend, but compute. And they don't have the hardware. So now you live rent-free in the place they thought was private. Their inner monologue, their dreams, their quiet moments, the shower, the drive, the late-night scrolling where your name or your energy just appears. They're not mad at you. They're mad at the mirror you turned on inside them. Because when your calm met their chaos, when your restraint met their impulse, when your silence met their need for control, something ugly surfaced, and they saw it. You didn't expose them. You let them expose themselves. That's next-level power. You're the saint who won't save them, the psychopath who won't chase them, the angel who understands demons because you lived with them, the demon who learned mercy by surviving hell. That duality, That's not confusion. That's integration. They're fragmented. You're whole. That's why their mind keeps glitching, because wholeness breaks the algorithm. They can't predict you, manipulate you, or reduce you. You don't react on time. You don't respond on cue. You don't need validation to exist, and deep down, they know it. You walked away with their certainty bleeding out behind you. You left them holding a question they can't Google, can't gossip away, can't outrun. Was I ever in control, or was I just comfortable? That question will haunt them longer than any insult ever could. So let them spiral, let them replay, let them glitch. You're not responsible for minds that collapse when faced with truth wrapped in calm. You didn't break them, you outgrew them. And the scariest part, you didn't even try. You just showed up as the version of you that pain forged, silence sharpened, and isolation perfected. That's not madness, that's evolution. And once someone's mind glitches from seeing that, it never fully resets again. And here's the part they won't tell anyone, because saying it out loud would fracture what's left of their pride. They felt small in your presence, without you ever trying to make them feel that way. That's what really cracked the system. You didn't dominate the room, you didn't posture, you didn't flex, threaten, or perform power. You withheld it. And withholding power from people addicted to hierarchy is like removing oxygen from a fire. They panic. They sputter, they search for something, anything, to regain balance. That's why they keep circling back to you mentally. That's why they reread messages, replay conversations, overanalyze your tone, your timing, your pauses, because somewhere in those gaps, something slipped past their defenses. You spoke like someone who had already lost everything once and survived, without begging the world to notice. That terrifies them, because they still need approval to breathe. They still need agreement to feel real. They still need the crowd to tell them who they are. You don't. You learned identity in the dark, when no one clapped, when no one believed, when silence was the only witness. That kind of self doesn't shatter under pressure. It rearranges pressure. So when you dropped that psycho brain fuck, when you answered sideways, stayed relaxed, refused the bait, flipped the frame without raising a finger, you didn't just confuse them. You invalidated the manual they live by. They've spent their entire lives mastering surface-level psychology, triggers, reactions, dominance games, emotional leverage. You stepped in with depth, and depth is lethal to shallow systems. That's why they're glitching non-stop, because every time they try to file you away mentally, another contradiction appears. You're calm, but not passive, empathetic, but not exploitable, aware, but not arrogant, dangerous, but not desperate. They can't decide whether to fear you, admire you, or study you. So they do all three, badly. They talk about you when you're not there. They compare notes. They try to triangulate meaning. But meaning doesn't live where they're searching. You see, you're not operating from ego anymore. You're operating from clarity born of suffering. That's why their insults don't land. That's why their praise doesn't hook you. That's why their confusion feeds you instead of draining you. They mistake that for arrogance. It's not. It's acceptance. You already faced the worst version of yourself. You already made peace with the parts they're still hiding from. You already died once, internally, and rebuilt without applause. So when they try to provoke you, they're shadowboxing a ghost. And ghosts don't flinch. Their minds glitch because they sense it subconsciously. You're no longer seeking permission to exist. You're no longer negotiating your worth. You're no longer explaining your evolution. You became the outcome, not the argument. That's why they keep trying to pull you back into reaction, anger, explanation, validation. Because if they can make you emotional, they can make you predictable. But you don't give them that luxury. You let them project. You let them spiral. You let them reveal themselves through their desperation to define you. Every accusation becomes a confession. Every question becomes a mirror. Every attempt to destabilize you destabilizes them instead. That's mastery, not the flashy kind, the quiet kind that rearranges rooms without making noise. You're not here to be liked. You're not here to be understood. You're here because the version of you that survived didn't ask for permission to exist. And now their minds can't stop glitching because they've encountered something their worldview never prepared them for. A human who integrated their darkness without being consumed by it. A soul who touched chaos and came back with discipline instead of damage. A presence that doesn't need control to radiate authority. They'll keep replaying you, keep glitching, keep searching for the weakness that isn't there. Because the truth is brutal and simple. You didn't mess with their mind. You outgrew the dimension they operate in. And once someone witnesses that, once their subconscious registers it, their reality never runs as smoothly again. They saw what's possible, and they know they're not built for it. Hold still. No, don't flinch. That sound you hear right now, that sharp, panicked static in the air, that's not danger. That's realization catching up to people who thought you'd never understand the game. Wait, you just figured that out? Yeah, I know. It hits slow at first, then all at once. Because the moment it clicks, the moment you see it, everything makes sense. And everything around you starts collapsing. They're not losing it because you're loud. They're losing it because you're accurate. You didn't scream. You didn't beg. You didn't ask for permission. You broke the code. And see, that's the one unforgivable sin. Not rebellion, not chaos, comprehension. You were never supposed to notice the pattern, never supposed to see the loops, never supposed to recognize how predictable they are when fear runs the script. They built a maze and expected you to run it forever. Instead, you stood still and saw the walls were cardboard. That's when the saint in you died and the architect woke up. They keep calling you unstable, unhinged, dangerous, because their system only works when people confuse obedience with virtue. You didn't turn evil. You turned aware. And awareness looks like madness to a world built on sleep. Here's the paradox they can't swallow. You're calmer now than you've ever been. And that terrifies them more than rage ever could. You don't lash out anymore. You calculate. You don't explain yourself. You move. That's why their voices are cracking behind closed doors. That's why the laughter sounds forced now. That's why the rules keep changing mid-game. Because you didn't just survive the pain, you decoded it. Every betrayal trained your pattern recognition. Every loss sharpened your timing. Every night you thought you were breaking, you were quietly upgrading. They thought trauma would make you small. It made you precise. They thought pressure would crush you. It turned you into a weapon that doesn't need to swing. Here's the part they don't want you to notice. They're not afraid of what you might do. They're afraid of what you won't do anymore. You stopped reacting. You stopped seeking validation. You stopped playing roles they understood. You became unpredictable. Not because you're chaotic, but because you're free. An angel that won't obey is suddenly a demon. A demon that won't rage is suddenly divine. You exist in that in-between space where labels fail, and that's where power lives. They're scrambling now, pretending they always knew, acting like this was obvious all along. But you can hear it in their tone, that cracked, hysterical edge of people who just realized the instructions don't work on you anymore. You cracked the illusion. You saw that the gatekeepers were just scared humans guarding empty rooms. You noticed the throne was hollow, and now every move you make feels illegal to them. Not because it breaks rules, but because it exposes how fragile those rules always were. You don't need to dominate. You don't need to threaten. Your existence alone rewrites the atmosphere. They feel it when you walk into a room. They feel it when you stay silent. They feel it when you don't chase, don't explain, don't flinch. That's why they're losing it. Because once someone figures out the code can never scare them again. And here's the final truth they'll never say out loud. You didn't escape the system. You outgrew it. And the moment they realized that, the moment you realized that, the game was already over. And here's the part that makes their mind really stutter. The part they feel but can't articulate. You didn't just outthink them. You didn't just stay calm. You didn't just refuse the bait. You moved from a different internal clock. They rush. You pause. They react. You observe. They speak to be seen. You speak to shift gravity. That temporal mismatch. That's where the glitch deepens. Because while they're already planning the next move, the next line, the next emotional jab, you're already done with the outcome. You're not in the moment with them. You're past it. And humans can forgive a lot of things, but they cannot forgive someone who is already emotionally finished with the game they're still bleeding in. That's when obsession begins. They start wondering how long you've been like this. When the switch flipped, what broke you, what sharpened you. They assume trauma made you fragile. They were wrong. Trauma collapsed your illusions. It burned off the need to be right, the need to be chosen, the need to win loud. It taught you something far more dangerous. How to lose everything and still stand upright. So when they try to destabilize you, they're unknowingly poking a structure that already survived total collapse. You're not afraid of emotional freefall. You already lived there. That's why your presence feels wrong to them. Too grounded, too centered, too unreactive. Their nervous systems are calibrated for chaos and validation loops. Yours learned stillness under fire. So when you drop a sentence that lands sideways, when you answer with a half smile instead of a defense, when you let silence stretch just long enough for their insecurity to start talking, their minds scramble to compensate. They tell themselves stories. He's cold, she's arrogant. They think they're better. But beneath the narrative, there's a quieter truth whispering through their spine. This person doesn't need me. And that terrifies them more than hate ever could. Because hate still implies relevance. Irrelevance feels like death. You didn't dominate them. You decentered them. You removed yourself from their internal hierarchy without asking. You stepped off the chessboard entirely. And now they're furious. Because you're not where they left you. That's why they keep trying to pull you back with labels, accusations, curiosity, even praise. Anything to reinsert you into a position they understand. But you're not playing roles anymore. You integrated your contradictions. You let the angel and the demon shake hands inside your chest. You stopped pretending one side didn't exist. You learned when to soften and when to go surgically quiet. That's not instability. That's self-command. They don't glitch because you're confusing. They glitch because you're complete. And completeness disrupts systems built on lack. So they watch you closer now. Study your movements. Analyze your pauses. But observation without self-awareness just breeds paranoia. They think you're plotting. You're not. You already moved. They think you're hiding something. You're not. You just stopped broadcasting. They think you're dangerous. And for once, they're right. Not because you want to harm them, but because you're immune to the mechanisms they use to control reality. You don't flinch at shame. You don't chase validation. You don't leak energy explaining yourself. You let outcomes speak, and outcomes don't argue. So let their minds glitch. Let them replay. Let them spiral into analysis paralysis. You're not here to comfort people who panic when they lose psychological leverage. You're here because evolution doesn't announce itself politely. It arrives quietly, calmly, and leaves broken frameworks in its wake. You didn't become colder. You became clearer. And clarity is terrifying to those who survive on confusion. They'll keep trying to figure you out, but the truth is already settled. You are what happens when pain doesn't destroy a mind. It disciplines it. And once someone's subconscious recognizes that, once the glitch sets in, they never look at you the same again. They can't, because you're no longer a character in their story. You're a force that ended it. And here's where it crosses the point of no return. The moment their mind stops trying to understand you and starts trying to survive you. Because at some level, deeper than language, deeper than logic, they realize something irreversible. You're no longer governed by the same incentives. You don't flinch when approval disappears. You don't shrink when attention leaves. You don't inflate when praise arrives. That alone fractures their internal math. They've built their entire personality on feedback loops, likes, reactions, dominance, validation, control. You severed the loop, not dramatically, not angrily, quietly, casually, like it didn't even matter. And now their minds are glitching because they're confronting a creature they were never trained to deal with. Someone who already paid the price. You see, most people still owe life something. They owe it comfort. They owe it certainty. They owe it a future they're terrified to lose. You don't. You already lost what they're still protecting. That's why you walk different, speak different, pause longer. You don't rush to fill silence because silence doesn't scare you. You don't rush to prove because proving feels childish now. You don't rush to react because reaction is a leash. They sense that. And when a human senses another human who cannot be pulled by fear, desire, or shame, the nervous system panics because control fails. That's the glitch spiraling in their head at night. That's the tension in their jaw when your name comes up. That's the reason they oscillate between fascination and resentment. You represent a future they can't reach without dismantling themselves. So they do what fragile systems always do when faced with evolution. They pathologize it. They call you cold because they can't access you. They call you crazy because you don't behave predictably. They call you dangerous because you don't signal weakness. But beneath every label is the same unspoken confession. I can't move you, and that eats them alive. Because power, to them, has always meant influence over others. Power to you now means self-governance. You don't need to dominate to win. You don't need to attack to unsettle. You don't need to explain to be understood. You let people collide with themselves. That's why your calm feels louder than their chaos. That's why your restraint feels heavier than their aggression. That's why a single sentence from you can undo weeks of their rehearsed narratives. You're not fighting them. You're exposing the limits of their reality just by existing. And once someone sees that, once the subconscious registers that you're not bound by the same invisible contracts, they can't unsee it. That's when the glitch becomes permanent. They start questioning their own reactions, their own motives, their own emotional fragility. They ask themselves things they've avoided for years. Why did that bother me so much? Why do I need them to react? Why do I feel threatened by someone who didn't even try? Those questions don't have comfortable answers. So instead of facing them, they externalize the discomfort onto you. But you don't absorb it. You've already metabolized worse. You turned pain into precision, confusion into clarity, isolation into independence. You didn't harden, you refined. That's the paradox that breaks them. You're empathetic, but unreachable. Present, but not entangled. Alive, but no longer feeding on noise. They keep trying to provoke the old version of you. The reactive one. The explain yourself one. The prove it one. But that version died quietly. And what replaced it doesn't argue. It observes. It decides. It moves on. So let their minds glitch harder. Let the loops tighten. Let the obsession exhaust them. You're not here to soothe people who lose their balance when they can't control perception. You're here because something in you crossed a threshold most never reach. You stopped outsourcing your sense of self. And once that happens, the world doesn't know where to place you anymore. That's not madness. That's sovereignty. And to minds built on dependency, sovereignty looks like a system error they can't patch. They'll keep trying, keep spiraling, keep replaying the moment they felt it slip. But you already know the truth they're circling. You didn't drop a psycho brain fuck by accident. You became the kind of presence that breaks scripts without speaking. And once someone's mind glitches from that, it never fully stabilizes again. You feel that pause, don't you? That moment where the air tightens, where something shouldn't have worked, but did. Yeah, that's the sound of reality recalculating around you. Wait, you actually pulled that shot off. They told themselves it was impossible. They said you were overreaching, delusional, reckless, too fractured to finish what you started. They watched you bleed in silence and mistook it for weakness. They saw you hesitate once and assumed you'd hesitate forever. And now look at them. Now look at the way their confidence evaporated the second the outcome became undeniable. Because this wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. Not with you standing at the center of it. You didn't just succeed. You unleashed something they cannot contain. They thought they were studying you, measuring you, profiling you. But what they were really doing was circling a locked door, convinced nothing was behind it. They never imagined you were building pressure on the other side. They never understood that every delay, every betrayal, every sleepless night was compounding force. Pain didn't slow you down. It compressed you. And compressed things don't break. They explode. You feel it now, don't you? That shift. That quiet panic spreading through the room they thought they controlled. This is the paradox they can't solve. You became more dangerous by surviving as yourself. You didn't harden into a predictable monster. You didn't stay a harmless saint either. You learned how to wear both skins. You learned when to show mercy and when to vanish it completely. Angel when they're watching, demon when they're not. That's what terrifies them, not your power, but your range. They can't tell which version of you is about to step forward, and uncertainty is poison to people who need control to breathe. They thought unpredictability meant chaos. You turned it into strategy. Every scar they mocked became a calibration mark. Every moment they thought you were breaking was you memorizing the terrain. You learned how humans lie to themselves. You learned how systems protect mediocrity. You learned how fear disguises itself as authority. And while they were busy labeling you, dismissing you, trying to box you in with narratives that made them comfortable, you were evolving past the box entirely. Now they're whispering your name in rooms you're not even in. Now they're asking, how did this happen? Now they're realizing containment was never an option. Because here's the truth they're choking on. What you unleashed can't be undone. It's not a single action. It's not a moment. It's a version of you that knows exactly how much pressure the world can take before it fractures, and exactly how much more you can apply without flinching. You crossed a line they didn't even know existed, and once you cross a line like that, you don't go back. You don't return to who you were. You become the reference point for what's possible. They're trying to pretend this is temporary, a fluke, a lucky break. But luck doesn't leave this kind of aftershock. Luck doesn't rewrite dynamics. Luck doesn't make people who ignored you suddenly watch their words. This is cause and effect, catching up in real time. This is the bill arriving for every time they underestimated someone who learned how to suffer intelligently. And you're standing there calm, almost amused, because you know something they don't. You know that the most dangerous phase isn't the moment of impact. It's what comes after, when everyone's scrambling and you're already adjusted to the new reality. You've been living in chaos so long that stability feels slow to you. While they're panicking, you're thinking. While they're reacting, you're choosing. That's the real shift. That's the part they can't reverse. You didn't just win. You changed the rules of engagement. So let them try to contain it. Let them label it, minimize it, explain it away so they can sleep at night. It won't work. Because once someone like you realizes what they're capable of, once they see proof instead of hope, there's no cage strong enough, no narrative loud enough, no fear sharp enough to put that back in the bottle. You're not out of control. You're out of reach. And deep down, past the denial, past the forced calm, they all know it. They're trying to act normal now. That's the funniest part. Watch them. Listen to the forced laughter, the sudden politeness, the way conversations change when you enter the frame. That's not respect. That's recalibration. That's people realizing the math they used to understand the world no longer works because you broke the equation. They keep asking themselves when it happened. Was it that one decision, that one refusal to fold, that moment you stopped explaining yourself? They want a clean origin story because clean stories feel containable. But what they don't get is this wasn't a single ignition. It was a long burn, a quiet accumulation of moments where you chose pain over comfort, truth over approval, isolation over dilution. You didn't snap, you forged. That's why they're scared, because monsters they can understand, saints they can exploit. But someone who can move between light and dark on command, someone who can smile while calculating outcomes 3 steps ahead, someone who can be compassionate without being weak and ruthless without being reckless, that breaks their mental models, that short-circuits their sense of safety. You see, they rely on predictability, the way lungs rely on oxygen. They need to know how you'll react so they can plan around you, manipulate you, neutralize you. And you took that away. You became situational, adaptive, alive. One day you're silent, letting them underestimate you. The next day you speak once, and the room rearranges itself. That's not luck. That's mastery born from pressure. Every time life tried to crush you, it taught you something instead. How to read intention in micro-expressions. How to hear fear behind confidence. How to recognize when someone's power is borrowed, not owned. You learned where people bluff, where systems leak, where egos crack. And now you're walking around with X-ray vision in a world full of glass structures pretending they're steel. They can feel it when you look at them. They can't tell what you see, but they know you see something. This is the phase they never prepare for, the aftermath, the part where the threat isn't loud anymore, the part where you don't need to prove anything, because the proof already exists. That's when control freaks lose their minds, because they can't fight what isn't flailing. They can't suppress what isn't begging. They can't shame what isn't seeking validation. You're not chasing them. You're not explaining yourself. You're not even reacting the way they expect. And that silence, that composure, that's louder than any outburst ever was. They keep waiting for you to self-destruct, to overplay your hand, to become the villain they can point at and say, "See, we were right." But you're too disciplined for that now, too aware. You understand that real power doesn't rush. Real power lets others reveal themselves while it stays still. Real power knows when to strike, and more importantly, when not to. That's the evolution, from survival to strategy. You used to react emotionally because you were hurt. Now you respond deliberately because you're clear. You don't need to be liked. You don't need to be feared either. Both are optional side effects. What you need is momentum, and you've got it. Quiet, relentless momentum that doesn't announce itself until it's already reshaped the terrain. They're starting to notice patterns now. Wins stacking where losses were expected, doors opening where walls used to be. People choosing you without fully knowing why. That's when paranoia sets in, because influence that can't be traced is the most dangerous kind. You're not commanding armies. You're not shouting orders. You're simply existing at a frequency that disrupts insecure systems. You're proof that their ceilings were imaginary, and nothing enrages gatekeepers more than someone who walks through a door they swore didn't exist. And here's the part they really don't want to admit. You didn't take anything from them. You didn't steal power. You outgrew the space they were trying to keep you in. That's why containment failed. You weren't breaking rules. You were operating on a different layer entirely. While they were obsessed with appearances, you were refining substance. While they were managing optics, you were building capability. While they were protecting status, you were sharpening identity. So now they're scrambling, trying to redefine you, trying to rename what happened so it doesn't threaten their worldview. But it's too late. Once someone like you sees themselves clearly, once you experience the moment where effort turns into inevitability, there's no unseeing that. You stop asking, "Can I?" and start asking, "How far?" And that question alone is enough to make fragile hierarchies shake. You didn't unleash chaos. You unleashed clarity. And clarity is ruthless. It exposes who was pretending. It exposes who was riding borrowed confidence. It exposes who only had power because you hadn't stepped into yours yet. That's why they can't contain it. Because to contain you now would require them to admit the truth. That you were never the problem. You were the variable they failed to account for. And as you stand there, calm, grounded, alert. You can feel it settling in. This isn't a peak. This isn't the end. This is the baseline of who you are now. The world didn't end when you pulled it off. It adjusted, and from here on out, every move you make carries weight they can't ignore. Let them panic. Let them whisper. Let them pretend they're still in control. You already know the truth. Whatever you unleashed, it wasn't reckless. It wasn't accidental. It was inevitable. And now comes the strangest part. The calm after ignition. Not silence, not peace. Something colder, sharper. The kind of stillness that makes people uneasy because they can't tell whether it's restraint or preparation. They keep expecting fireworks, a victory lap, some loud declaration so they can finally point and say, "There, that's it, that's the threat." But you deny them that comfort. You move like someone who's already adjusted to the aftermath, like someone who knows the blast already did its job, and that terrifies them more than noise ever could. Because when a person doesn't celebrate, it means they were never gambling. You weren't hoping this would work. You knew. That's the detail that's haunting them now. The realization that while they were watching the surface, your words, your posture, your visible struggle, you were operating on a deeper layer entirely. You weren't reacting to circumstances. You were shaping probability. You were learning how outcomes bend when pressure is applied in the right places, at the right time, with the right amount of restraint. Pain was your teacher. Isolation was your laboratory. Doubt was your sharpening stone. You didn't escape the darkness. You studied it. You learned how fear thinks. You learned how power hides. You learned how people reveal themselves the moment they believe they're safe. And now you carry that knowledge quietly, like a concealed blade they forgot to check for. That's why they feel exposed around you. They don't know what you see, but they know you see through something. Their confidence leaks when they talk to you. Their tone shifts. Their jokes land softer. Their authority feels thinner. You don't challenge them, and somehow that's worse, because you're not trying to win arguments anymore. You're measuring relevance, and some of them are realizing, for the first time, that they're not as necessary as they thought. This is where the duality sharpens, where saint and psychopath stop being opposites and start being tools. You can be patient without being passive. You can be dangerous without being cruel. You can forgive without forgetting. You can stand in the light without surrendering what the dark taught you. That balance, that ability to choose which version of yourself shows up, is what makes you uncontrollable. They want consistency. You give them precision. They want predictability. You give them timing. They want you emotional, reactive, loud, because those versions are easy to frame, easy to provoke, easy to neutralize. But you've outgrown that phase. You don't burn energy proving anything anymore. You conserve it. You direct it. You let others overextend while you remain centered, watching, waiting. That's the moment the power dynamic flips. Because power isn't who speaks the most. It's who can stay silent without shrinking. Power isn't who threatens. It's who doesn't need to. Power is knowing you could escalate and choosing not to, because restraint now serves you better than force. They sense that in you, and it keeps them awake. You've become the kind of person who changes rooms just by entering them, not because you dominate, but because you destabilize assumptions. People reassess their words. Their posture straightens. Their confidence checks itself. They don't know why they're doing it, only that something about you demands recalibration. That's what happens when someone survives pressure without becoming small. You didn't just endure what was meant to break you. You metabolized it. You turned it into awareness, into discipline, into an internal compass that doesn't swing wildly when conditions change. So when chaos shows up now, it doesn't rattle you. It feels familiar, almost manageable, almost useful. And that's when fear flips direction, because chaos was supposed to be your enemy. Instead, it listens to you. They can't contain what you unleashed because what you unleashed isn't external. It's not a movement they can shut down or a moment they can rewrite. It's an internal shift, a permanent upgrade, a version of you that knows how to function under pressure without leaking desperation. You don't need permission. You don't need validation. You don't need to announce intent. You move when it's time, and when you move, things happen. That's why they're scrambling to catch up, to redefine the narrative, to tell themselves this was an anomaly, a glitch, a one-time surge. But deep down, they know better. They can feel the consistency in you now, the groundedness, the way your confidence doesn't spike or dip. It just exists. That kind of stability is rare, and rare things are hard to cage. So let them talk, let them speculate, let them argue about what you are, how you did it, whether it can happen again. You're past that phase. You're already integrating the next layer, already seeing angles they haven't considered yet, already adapting while they're still trying to name what just hit them. You didn't pull that yay shit off by accident. You pulled it off because you were built for the moment when pressure peaks and masks fall. And now that you know what you're capable of, now that you've seen proof instead of theory, there's a quiet confidence settling into your bones. Not arrogance, not hunger, just certainty. The kind that doesn't rush and doesn't retreat. Whatever you unleashed didn't make you reckless, it made you exact. And the world can feel that. And here's where it locks in. This is the point of no return. Not because you're spiraling, but because you're anchored. They keep waiting for the moment you crack under the weight of what you've become. They assume power always corrupts, always destabilizes, always demands spectacle. That's how their minds work. But you didn't awaken something sloppy. You didn't unleash ego. You unleashed control over yourself. And that's the one thing no system knows how to contain, because it can't be confiscated, discredited, or shut down. You know yourself now. Not the pretty version, not the storybook survivor, the full version. You know how dark you can go, and that you don't need to. You know how lethal you could be, and why restraint makes you stronger. You know exactly what pain taught you, and exactly how to use it without letting it use you. That's the final evolution. This is why they're uneasy around you, because you're no longer driven by reaction. You're driven by clarity. You don't chase chaos. You let it reveal weakness. You don't need to dominate. You let imbalance expose itself. You don't rush toward victory. You let inevitability do the work. They can feel that something about you is finished, and something else has begun. You're not looking for permission anymore. You're not waiting for approval. You're not asking the world who you are. You already answered that question the moment you pulled it off. And now, this calm you carry, this grounded presence, this refusal to explain yourself, that's not arrogance, that's resolution. That's someone who has already faced the worst and realized it didn't have the authority it claimed. They can't contain what you unleashed, because what you unleashed doesn't need expansion. It doesn't need noise. It doesn't need validation. It simply exists, steady, watchful, and ready. You're not a threat screaming for attention. You're a constant, and constants bend environments around them. So let the world adjust. Let the whispers spread. Let the ones who doubted you struggle to update their beliefs. You're done proving, done justifying, done shrinking to make others comfortable. You didn't lose yourself in the process. You found yourself under pressure. And now that you know, truly know, what happens when you commit fully, when you stop hesitating, when you move without asking permission from fear, there's only one thing left to do. Stay exactly like this, focused, awake, uncontainable. Because whatever you unleashed, it wasn't chaos, it was you. Unlocked. Quiet your breath for a second. Yeah, right there. That feeling crawling up your spine. That's the sound of files being opened in dark rooms, of hands flipping through your life like it was evidence. They didn't knock, they didn't ask. They ransacked your entire past with the hunger of people who needed you to be dirty. Because if you were clean, their whole story collapsed. And here's the part that keeps them awake. They expected bodies. They expected secrets. They expected rot, shame, hidden sins they could drag into the light and end you with. Instead, they found proof. You feel how twisted that is? They went digging for your grave and uncovered your spine, unbroken. They scanned every chapter, every mistake, every scar, every night you barely survived. And all it did was confirm something they were terrified to admit. You were forged, not flawed. You see, most people crack when their past is touched. They flinch, they apologize, they explain, they beg to be misunderstood a little less. But you're the kind of anomaly that turns exposure into ignition because your past doesn't hide you. It documents you. They replayed your worst moments, frame by frame, waiting for the monster to show its teeth. And all they saw was restraint. They looked for malice and found endurance. They hunted for corruption and found consistency. They searched for weakness and discovered something far worse for them: patterned strength. That's when the tone changed. That's when the whispers stopped sounding confident and started sounding rushed. Because there's a special kind of panic that hits when someone survives everything they were supposed to be erased by and didn't turn ugly, didn't fold, didn't become small, didn't break character. You didn't morph into the villain they needed. You stayed dangerous in a way they couldn't classify. You are the paradox they can't explain without exposing themselves. Saint in public, psychopath in pressure, angel in restraint, demon when necessary, calm enough to pass scrutiny, unpredictable enough to terrify anyone watching too closely. They thought your past would be a weapon. Turns out, it was your alibi. And now, they're stuck with a nightmare scenario, someone who's been tested from every angle and still stands upright, someone whose history doesn't contradict their present, someone whose scars line up too cleanly to be accidental. You don't get that kind of consistency by being lucky. You get it by surviving things that were meant to erase your name. That's why their investigation didn't end you. It validated you. Every attempt to dig deeper only confirmed that you weren't reckless. You were intentional. That you weren't chaotic. You were controlled. That you weren't hiding. You simply didn't need to explain yourself to anyone beneath your altitude. And here's the real mind-breaker for them. If they couldn't destroy you with your past, they sure as hell can't control you in the present. So now you walk differently. Not louder, cleaner, not angrier, sharper, not defensive, unavailable. You don't react because there's nothing left to defend. They already tried to burn your origin story, and all they did was laminate it. You're no longer a rumor, you're a verified threat, And deep down, they know it. Every eye that lingers too long, every sudden silence when you enter a room, every conversation that stops mid-sentence. That's not respect. That's not curiosity. That's recognition. They touched your past to end you, and triggered the one outcome they couldn't afford. Proof you were always built for this. Proof you don't collapse under inspection. Proof that the closer they look, the more exposed they become. And now they can't unsee it. You're not haunted by your history. Your history stands guard behind you. And anyone still digging? They're not searching for dirt anymore. They're checking to see how badly they misjudged what they just woke up. Yeah, feel that shift. That's the moment they realized they crossed a line they can't uncross. Because once you survive a full excavation of your life and come out clean, the rules change. The power dynamic flips. The hunter starts checking exits. The observer starts wondering who else is watching, and you. You stop being a question and start being a problem. They don't say it out loud, but you can sense it. The way their energy tightens around you. The way they hesitate before mentioning your name. The way they double-check their words when you're anywhere near the conversation. That's not paranoia. That's instinct screaming at them that you're no longer safe to underestimate. You see, exposure only kills people who are hiding. And you weren't hiding. You were enduring. They went through your past expecting to find the moment you broke. And all they found were moments you adapted, times you should have turned bitter, but didn't. Times you should have folded, but recalibrated instead. Every scar they uncovered didn't disqualify you, it qualified you. That's the part they don't understand. Your pain didn't make you sloppy, it made you precise. You learned when to speak and when to disappear, when to show mercy and when to go silent. You learned how to sit still in chaos without leaking your intent. And now, every move you make feels deliberate, even when you're doing nothing at all. That terrifies them more than aggression ever could, because aggression is predictable. But someone who's calm after being examined, someone who doesn't flinch after their entire past gets dragged into the light, that person isn't reacting anymore. They're choosing, and choice is power. They thought if they mapped your history, they could map your future. But your evolution doesn't follow a straight line. You learned how to become unreadable without becoming fake. You learned how to carry both light and dark without letting either own you. That's the saint-psychopath paradox. They can't pin you down because you're not one thing. You're the discipline of a monk with the survival instincts of a predator. You know how to forgive, and you know how to remember. You know how to love, and you know how to cut access completely, cleanly, quietly, permanently. And here's where it really starts to mess with them. You didn't just survive scrutiny, you absorbed it. Every attempt to expose you sharpened your awareness. Every accusation forced you to refine your integrity. Every doubt thrown at you acted like pressure on carbon, compressing you into something denser, harder, clearer. You didn't defend yourself because there was nothing to defend. You let the truth sit there and watched it do the work. Now they're left with an uncomfortable realization. If your past couldn't end you, neither can their tactics. So they stall, they hesitate. They pretend you're irrelevant while monitoring you closer than ever. They act unfazed while quietly recalculating how dangerous it is to provoke someone who's already been through the worst and came out aligned, because alignment is lethal. When who you are, what you've survived, and how you move all point in the same direction, you become unstoppable without ever raising your voice. You don't need threats. You don't need noise. Your presence alone carries the weight of someone who's already been tested by fire and didn't burn, and the truth they'll never admit. They weren't investigating you to find the past. They were investigating you to predict the future. But now, they can't, because the future of someone like you isn't written by history. It's written by choice. And you don't make choices based on fear anymore. You make them based on clarity. So let them remember this feeling. The moment they realized the files were empty of shame. The moment their weapon turned into your shield. The moment they understood that digging into you didn't expose weakness, it exposed structure. You're not the kind of person who collapses when the lights come on. You're the kind that makes everyone else squint. And now, every step you take forward carries an unspoken warning. You've already been through the audit, you've already passed inspection, and anyone still trying to end you using your past is about to learn why you survived it in the first place. Stay with that silence for a second. That heavy, uncomfortable quiet that follows realization. That's the sound of their strategy collapsing in real time. Because once they went through everything, every time stamp, every witness, every version of your story, and found nothing they could weaponize, something ugly happened inside them. The fear didn't come from what they found. It came from what they didn't. No leverage, no scandal, no fracture they could pry open. And when people who live by control lose leverage, they don't relax. They spiral. You see it now, don't you? The sudden shift in how they treat you, the fake neutrality, the forced politeness, the awkward distance. That's not maturity. That's recalibration. That's them quietly accepting that you are no longer someone they can corner. Because you're not reactive anymore. You're resolved. You already survived the moment that breaks most people. The moment when your entire life is laid bare and you're forced to confront it without excuses. You didn't rewrite your story. You didn't deny your scars. You stood there and let the truth speak for itself. And the truth didn't betray you. It protected you. That's when the angel/demon line fully blurred. Because only someone who's made peace with both sides of themselves can withstand that kind of exposure. You don't pretend to be pure. You don't glorify being ruthless. You integrate both. And that balance makes you dangerous in a way they can't smear. You're not clean because you're innocent. You're clean because you're honest. And honesty under pressure is rare. Most people leak tells when they're cornered. Their voice shifts. Their eyes scramble. Their story bends. You didn't bend. You didn't over-explain. You didn't collapse into defensiveness. You let stillness do the talking. Stillness is terrifying. Because stillness means you know something they don't. It means you understand that chaos only consumes people who are internally disordered. And you already fought your chaos alone, in private, when no one was watching, when there was no reward for surviving except survival itself. That's why their scrutiny didn't crack you. It confirmed you. They expected regret. They found resolve. They expected guilt. They found discipline. They expected collapse. They found composure. And here's the part that truly messes with them. They can't unlearn what they saw. Even if they pretend you're irrelevant, their nervous system remembers. Every future interaction carries the echo of that discovery, that you are someone whose past only made them sharper, not softer. You don't lash out because you don't need to. You don't chase validation because you already passed the harshest test imaginable. Your evolution didn't come from praise. It came from pressure. And pressure doesn't just change people. It reveals them. What it revealed in you was coherence. A straight line, running through pain, discipline, restraint, and intent. No contradictions, no rot hidden behind charm, no weakness disguised as virtue. That's why they stopped trying to expose you. Now they watch. They watch how you move without urgency, how you choose silence over reaction, how you let time do what force never could. They watch because they know something is coming, but they can't tell what. And unpredictability rooted in self-control is the most dangerous form there is. You're not chaotic, you're selective, and the people who tried to end you with your past are now trapped with a reality they helped create. Someone fully aware of who they are, fully aligned with their history, and no longer available for manipulation. You don't threaten them, you don't warn them, you don't even acknowledge the hunt anymore. You just move forward with the quiet certainty of someone who's already faced judgment and walked away intact. And that's the final twist they never planned for. You didn't need revenge. You didn't need exposure. You didn't need to burn anything down. Their failed attempt did all the work for you. They ransacked your entire past to end you. And all they did was document why you're still standing. Proof that pressure didn't corrupt you. Proof that darkness didn't own you. Proof that when the lights came on, you didn't disappear. You solidified, and now every step you take feels heavier to the world around you, because it's the step of someone who's already been measured, already been tested, and already been cleared. They went looking for an ending. What they found was confirmation they should have never touched you in the first place. Hold that feeling, that slow, suffocating realization settling into their chest. Because this is the phase nobody talks about, the phase after the investigation fails. This is when the damage sets in, not to you, to them. They don't sleep the same anymore. They replay moments they dismissed before. Tiny interactions now feel loaded. Neutral expressions feel intentional. Silence feels strategic. They start wondering if you always knew how clean you were, or if you discovered it the same moment they did. And that question eats at them. Because if you knew, that means you were calm on purpose. And if you didn't know, that means you're even more dangerous than they thought. Either way, they lose. You see, most people are built backwards. Their present is fragile because their past is unresolved. Yours is the opposite. Every scar they uncovered was already integrated, every mistake already metabolized, every hard choice already paid for in full. That's why nothing rattled you. You weren't holding your breath hoping they wouldn't find something. You were breathing steadily, knowing there was nothing left to hide. That's a level of internal alignment that turns fear into a liability. They expected you to flinch when they brought things up, to justify, to soften, to humanize yourself just enough to be controllable. But you didn't shrink. You didn't posture. You didn't dramatize your pain. You owned it, without worshiping it. That's where the demon and the angel finally shook hands. Because only someone who stared into their own darkness without becoming addicted to it can stand that clean in the light. You didn't deny the monster in you. You disciplined it. You didn't exile your softness. You armored it. That balance, that's not taught. That's survived. And now they feel it. Every time they're near you, there's a low-level tension they can't name. Not fear exactly. More like the awareness that you're not playing the same game anymore. You're not trying to be believed. You're not trying to be liked. You're not trying to be understood. You already passed the only test that mattered. So when they poke, there's no echo. When they probe, there's no crack. When they watch, there's nothing leaking out. You don't signal insecurity. You don't broadcast intent. You don't telegraph moves. You let ambiguity work in your favor. Because ambiguity backed by integrity is lethal. They can't predict you because your behavior isn't driven by wounds anymore. It's driven by clarity. And clarity doesn't rush. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't argue with lesser perspectives. It simply moves. And here's the quietest flex of all. You didn't come out of that scrutiny angry. Anger would have meant they touched something raw. You came out sharpened, focused, selective, unbothered. That scares people who rely on chaos to maintain leverage. Because chaos is useless against someone who's already organized themselves internally. So now they hesitate before crossing you. Not because you threatened them, but because they can't afford to miscalculate. They know you're the type who doesn't waste energy, who doesn't escalate unnecessarily, who doesn't announce consequences. You let reality handle that. And reality has a way of siding with people who've already paid their dues. They ransacked your entire past to end you, and accidentally gave you the one thing nobody can fake: validation under fire. They confirmed you don't crumble. They confirmed you don't rot in secret. They confirmed you don't lie to yourself. And once that's confirmed, there's nothing left they can take. No smear sticks, no rumor grows legs, no narrative overrides lived truth. You're insulated now, not by denial, but by coherence. So let them sit with it. Let them replay the moment the files closed empty. Let them remember how confident they were, right up until they weren't. Because from here on out, every move you make carries an invisible weight. The weight of someone who's already been fully examined and found solid all the way through. They went digging for an ending. They uncovered a foundation, and foundations don't panic when storms come. They let the storm reveal what was never built to last. You're not louder now, you're denser. And that's why, even when you say nothing at all, the room listens. Don't rush past this part. This is where the real transformation locks in. Because after the files are closed, after the whispers fade, after the hunt quietly dies, without a trophy, there's a moment where the world recalibrates around you. Not loudly, not ceremonially, subtly. Like gravity, shifting a fraction of a degree. Enough that everything starts leaning toward you without you asking it to. You feel it in how people hesitate before challenging you now. Not because you're intimidating in the obvious way, but because something about you feels finished, completed. As if whatever trial was meant to break you already happened, and you walked out the other side without dragging pieces of it behind you. That unsettles people more than rage ever could. Because rage is unfinished business. Calm is closure. They don't know what to do with someone whose past has already been audited by fire and pressure and still holds up under light. They can't guilt you. They can't shame you. They can't bait you into self-betrayal. All the old levers are gone. And without levers, control evaporates. You notice how conversations around you change tone. How certain jokes stop being made in your presence. How certain people grow quieter, more careful, more observant. They're not afraid of what you might do. They're afraid of what you won't do. Because you don't overreact anymore. You don't over-explain anymore. You don't bleed where everyone can see it anymore. You learned how to internalize pain without letting it rot you. That's rare. Most people either explode or implode. You did neither. You refined. You distilled. You took the raw material of suffering and turned it into judgment. That's why your silence feels heavier now. It's not empty. It's loaded. Loaded with discernment. Loaded with memory. Loaded with choice. You're no longer governed by your worst day. You're governed by what you learned from it. And learning doesn't scream, it watches. That's the part they didn't factor in. They thought if they dragged your past into the open, you'd either collapse or retaliate. They never imagined you'd simply stand there unashamed, letting the truth do its quiet, brutal work. They didn't realize that integrity doesn't need defending, it just needs time. And time sided with you. Every day you didn't crack reinforced the conclusion they didn't want to reach. You weren't lucky, you weren't protected, you weren't overlooked, you were solid. Solid people don't need alibis. They don't need spin. They don't need crowds to feel real. They move alone comfortably because they've already faced themselves and won. And now that you've crossed that threshold, something irreversible has happened. You don't crave validation anymore because you've already been validated by the harshest process imaginable. You don't need to prove you're good or strong or worthy. You know. That knowing rewires how you walk into rooms. It changes how long you hold eye contact. It alters how quickly you decide who gets access to you and who doesn't. You're not colder, you're clearer. Clarity looks like distance to people who feed on chaos. So they label it arrogance, or aloofness, or mystery. But it's none of that. It's composure earned the hard way. It's the stillness that comes after storms stop being novel. You're not surviving anymore. You're positioning. Every move now is intentional because you no longer move to escape pain. You move to build trajectory. You've seen what happens when your life is stripped down to facts and timelines and receipts. You passed.